huge game for Pitt tonight as the Panthers go on the road for a late one, a 9 o'clock game at Wake Forest. Another huge opportunity for Pitt as they're moving through this stretch run. They're all huge opportunities, certainly. There are no games you look at that you say they're not a huge opportunity as the Panthers continue to try and build their resume for an NCAA tournament bid. What do they need to do again tonight in the rematch against Wake Forest? What is Wake Forest going to try and do to Pitt? And can they win if they don't get 41 points from Blake Hinson? Well, they can, obviously, because they did that against Wake Forest before. Let's look at it a little bit more closely, what Pitt needs to do to beat the Deacons tonight in Winston-Salem here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't you love it when, the host of a program like this asks a question and then answers it right away? Like I say, can they win without 41 points from Blake Hinson? And, well, yeah, he scored 17 the last time they played Wake Forest and they won that game. So, yes, they can win without 41 points from Blake Hinson. But a bigger question and a more interesting question, and I mean, it's sort of ridiculous 25 games into the season to even talk about this because it's not like things have really changed. I mean, Blake Hinson, everybody's on notice about Blake Hinson. Everybody else in the ACC knows about Blake Hinson. Everybody else in the ACC is going to be focused on stopping Blake Hinson when they face Pitt. But in the wake of a 41-point game, it feels like they're even more on notice. They have to devote even more attention and more defense on Blake Hinson. And so the question becomes, if Wake Forest does that, if they dedicate all of their resources and energy to stopping and slowing down Blake Hinson, can the rest of the team make Wake Forest or any other opponent that chooses to do that, make them pay for such a decision? Now, I'm not sure if Wake Forest would be inclined to test that out, since Bub Carrington had like 24 against them last time and Ishmael Leggett had 22. So it might be a little less desirable for Steve Forbes and the Deacons to, take that approach of, anybody but Blake, because, well, last game, somebody other than Blake did beat Wake Forest. And that's just on the offensive end. Obviously, a lot of defense to talk about as well. Okay, you know the deal. We're here. It's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's a Tuesday, rolling through the week and heading toward another game. It's game day. Pitt at Wake Forest tonight, and we get you ready for it right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We do these Morning Pitt videos every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, we also have our weekly live show, the Panther-Lair Show, that we do every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett from Panther-Lair.com get together and hang out with you. And then we have our post-game shows that we do after every road basketball game. We'll be live tonight. Yeah, this is a 9 o'clock game. We'll be live after this one. Hopefully it moves quickly like the Virginia game so we can get on the air somewhere around 11. I'm guessing it'll be closer to a quarter after or so. But we'll get on the air. We'll go live. I'm going to stop saying get on the air. Although it'd be funny if we just use old TV cliches to talk about things like a YouTube show. We're going to get on the air. We'll start broadcasting sort of a YouTube thing. Anyway, we'll be live probably around 11:15 for good 45 minutes, an hour, however long it takes to talk about this game. So when Pitt Wake Forest ends, head over here to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com for the live Panther-Lair post-game show. And if you're worried that you'll forget about it, if you're worried like, how am I going to remember that there's a live show? I always forget it. I always want to participate because I watch it the next day or I listen to it the next day. And it always seems like a lot of fun, but I always forget. I have a solution for you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The subscribe button's right down there. You see where I'm pointing at that yellow .com? There's a blue subscribe button right there. Click that thing. And then once you do that, you can turn on notifications so that every time we go live or we post a new video or anything like that, you'll get an alert sent to your phone. It's like, hey, Panther-Lair.com, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com or Panther-Lair.com on YouTube, whatever we call it, however it shows up in the notifications. They're live right now, so tune in. And that way you won't miss it. Because the post-game shows are fun, just like the live streams on Wednesday night, because you guys use that chat screen here, and you can post your comments and questions. We can have some back and forth. We can have a conversation. It's not just me talking to you. It's everybody interacting back and forth. It's like a call-in show. It's a good time. So youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com tonight after the game. And then, of course, don't forget the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle. Football, basketball, recruiting, everything is right there at Panther-Lair.com. and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of Pitt fans. People say they want to quit the message boards. They just can't quit the message boards because you are a Pitt fan and you are interacting with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Your favorite thing to do as a Pitt fan is to watch Pitt. Your second favorite thing to do as a Pitt fan is to talk to other Pitt fans about it. And there's no better place to do that than right here right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, Pitt at Wake Forest tonight. Obviously, the Panthers took on the Demon Deacons in Pittsburgh. That was January 31st. It was the 31st because it was the game after the Miami game. And incidentally, if you go back and look through our YouTube videos, like in the immediate aftermath of the Miami game was like on a Saturday when Pitt lost at Miami. And then that following Monday, our Morning Pitt video, the headline was, "Is time running out for Pitt?" You know, they had beaten Duke and Georgia Tech. They went on the road and beat Duke, and they beat Georgia Tech. And so it was like, well, there's a little bit of momentum there. But when they blew the Miami game, it became a real question of, you know, is it too little, too late? Have they run out of time here to make their case as an NCAA tournament team? And that was the video we did on Monday, the 29th. On Wednesday, the 31st, Wake Forest came to the Peterson Event Center. And this was really the game that I think sparked the run. I mean, the Duke game obviously was a huge one. You bounce back from the Syracuse game. You're 1-5 at that point going to Cameron. You had just gotten destroyed by Duke at the Peterson Event Center like a week earlier. And they go down there and they beat Duke. And that was huge. I mean, that was a real catalyst. But I think the Wake Forest game was really what ignited the run they're on now. The 5-game winning streak that they're on right now, which we talked about yesterday. You know, they're one of only 4 Power 5 teams in the country with a winning streak of at least 5 games or more currently. It started with the Wake Forest game. And it was not an easy game. I mean, Pitt was down 13-7 in the first half. They were down 41-35 in the second half. They were down 11 in the second half. They were down 12 in the second half. And obviously had to build that comeback. And there's a lot that went into that comeback, and we could talk about it. You know, huge buckets by Bub Carrington and Ishmael Leggett down the stretch. The defensive effort of Will Jeffers, which we're going to talk about and come back to here in a second. But it was a huge game. And I think that provided, really was the spark. For as big as the Duke game was, the Wake Forest game is the one that kicked off this run. They beat Wake Forest. They beat Notre Dame. They go to NC State and win. They go to Virginia and win. They trounce Louisville on Saturday. 5 wins in a row. Now they're 17-8. They're 8-6 in the ACC. They're in 4th place in the conference. They've won 7 out of their last 8. And with 6 games left to play, they're the hottest team in the conference and one of the hottest teams in the country. And it started with this. I think it started with this Wake Forest game. Now they're going on the road. They're going to Winston-Salem, and they've got a big challenge if they want to repeat that. Wake Forest obviously looking for revenge, more importantly looking to build its own NCAA tournament resume. The Deacons considered to be, really one of the bubble teams right now. They sit with a 16-9 overall record, also an 8-6 ACC record like Pitt has, but Pitt obviously with the head-to-head tiebreaker, having beat Wake Forest at the Peterson Event Center. Since that game at Pitt, Wake Forest has defeated Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and NC State. With Syracuse and NC State at home, Georgia Tech on the road. Then they went to Duke and lost by 8. And then most recently on Saturday, they lost at Virginia 49-47. Virginia bounces back from the loss to Pitt by holding Wake Forest to 47 points. I don't know that Pitt is necessarily going to be able to hold Wake Forest to 47 points. Pitt scored 77 against Wake Forest the first time around. But there's a lot, I think, going into this game. I think there's a lot to look at and talk about with this game on a few different levels. It's going to be interesting to watch over the next 6 games going forward how teams handle Blake Hinson. Like, Blake Hinson didn't just appear out of nowhere and score 41 points against Louisville. He had 27 the game before that. He had 27 at Virginia. So he scored 68 points last week. He blew up for 41 against Louisville, but it's not like now all of a sudden teams are going to focus on him. They've been focusing on him to a large extent. It'll be interesting to see if that increases. And I'm not sure that there's all that much more room to increase. And part of the reason is I don't know that it really behooves these other teams to focus on Hinson and pay less attention to Bub Carrington, Jalen Lowe, and Ishmael Leggett. The 4 factors of production for Pitt: Hinson, Lowe, Carrington, Leggett. And like I mentioned, a little bit ago, in the first Wake Forest game, Blake Hinson only scored 17 points. Bub Carrington had 24 and Ishmael Leggett had 22. Those guys made the big shots for Pitt down the stretch. It was a 57-57 tie with 6:45 left to play, and Ishmael Leggett made a 3 and then hit a basket, which could have been an and one, but he missed the free throw. And then Bub Carrington hit a jump shot. And all of a sudden that 57-57 lead turned into a 7-point Pitt lead, forcing Wake Forest to take a timeout. And Wake Forest would never really threaten again. And it was Carrington and Leggett who made the plays. And, so much last week I talked about the stats over the last 7 games, what those 4 guys have done over the last 7 games. Blake Hinson, obviously, and I talked about this yesterday. Now, if you look at the last 8 games, dating back to the Duke game till now, a stretch where Pitt is 7-1, Hinson's averaging 21.5 points per game. He's shooting almost 51% from 3. I mean, he's ridiculous. But these other guys, they aren't exactly slouching either. Like Bub Carrington's averaging 12.3 points per game over the last 8 games. And he's averaging 5.4 rebounds and 3.9 assists. He's basically averaging 12, 5, and 4 over the last 8 games. That's outstanding. That is great production. Jalen Lowe, 13.1 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists per game over the last 8 games. Ishmael Leggett, 13, 5, and 2, basically. 13 points, 4.9 rebounds, 1.9 assists. And 1.6 steals per game. Taking Blake Hinson out of the game, if such a thing is possible, is just not sound strategy. Because at this point, 25 games into the season, all 3 of these guys can kill you. And they did in the first game. They did in the game at the Peterson Events Center. Carrington shot 7 of 15 from the floor. He got 8 points at the free throw line to put up 24. Leggett was 9 of 16 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3 to get 22 points. Jalen Lowe had a quiet game, 6 points, 1 assist, 2 rebounds. Didn't perform the way, that was really his quietest game out of this 8-game stretch, and even with that, with a 6-point game in there, he's still averaging 13 points per game. And when you get, really 4 guys all averaging more than 12 points per game the way they are right now, those are averages, which I think tells you that at any point, any one of those 4, and probably any 2 of those 4 can go off and push toward 20 and get over 20 to beat you. I'm pretty sure those guys are going to score. I'm not counting out Blake Hinson. I'm pretty sure he's going to score tonight too. The biggest thing I'm watching tonight, and this might even be like a little bit of a prediction, but I just think it could be a real galvanizing moment, another catalyst moment for this team, is Federico. Look, in that last game, Efton Reed was all over Federico. He owned him, quite simply. Wake Forest the first basket of the game, came with Efton Reed backing down Federico, which he had done like twice at that point, and I think he did it on the next possession too. And ended up like missing the basket or something like that. But he clearly had the advantage in the post, and clearly his strength was giving him an advantage over Federico. And so I think on like Wake Forest next possession after that, Pitt started doubling him, and it opened up a wide open 3. It gave Wake Forest a 5-2 lead because of the advantage that Reed had down low over Federico. This is the big challenge for Federico. He didn't get that much stronger since January 31st, over the last, over 21 days. He hasn't gotten that much stronger over the last 3 weeks. But but I do think his level of play has improved. In the last 5 games, he's averaging 4.5 points, 6.8 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks per game. Now, those numbers aren't necessarily the type of numbers that are going to translate against Reed. His performance against Reed isn't really going to translate to numbers at all, at least not for Federico. It's going to translate to numbers on Reed's stat line. And what he needs to do is limit Reed's rebounds and field goal attempts. We all know what happened in the final 8 minutes of the game at Pitt. Will Jeffress started defending Efton Reed and really shut him down. Reed didn't score in the final 8 minutes of the game. I don't think he even attempted a field goal in the final 8 minutes of the game. Will Jeffress was all over him. And so that's going to be in Jeff Capel's back pocket here, that if he wants to deploy Jeffress again, if he wants to put Jeffress on Reed and create that challenge again, it's open to him. I don't know if it's something you can do for 25, 30, 35 minutes in a game. At some point, you're going to have to get valuable, useful minutes out of Federico. You're going to need him to defend Reed and handle Reed and not get back down. Be tough at the rim, out-rebound Reed, and try to defend him and keep him under wraps. Since the Pitt game in the last 5 games, Efton Reed over the last 5 games is averaging 9 and 7. So still kind of playing pretty well. He had 14 against Pitt. It's a matchup that a guy with Reed's strength and size, should be able to take advantage of. But I think Federico's been playing better. And if he can step it up tonight, if he can, I don't want to say control Reed, because that's not even what you need. You just need him to be sort of limited. You need it to be difficult for Reed. You need it to not be easy money every time they pass the ball into the post to Efton Reed. And you don't want to have to double team in order to contain him. Wake Forest is too good of a shooting team that if you double team too often, they're going to make you pay from outside. It's sort of unfamiliar for us who watch Pitt because Pitt doesn't really have anybody that commands that kind of attention down low that can create those open looks outside. But Wake Forest can do that, and they're good enough to do that. And so Federico's going to have to handle Efton Reed on his own, and that could be the matchup of the game tonight. It really could. And if he can do it, what a huge boost that'll be going forward. What a huge boost that would be for Federico and for Pitt heading into what'll be, they have 6 games left after tonight. It's 5 games. It would be gigantic. Now, as we were entering the final 8 games of the season, we all talked about it's, it was the stretch run. What could they do? A lot of people said 6-2 would be, or final 8 or 9 games. I forget where we were making that cutoff. It was the final 9 games. That's right, because everybody said 7-2. If they could go 7-2, they're going to have a shot. They win 1 or 2 games in the ACC tournament, and they'll have a chance to make the NCAA tournament. Well, they're 3 games into that 9-game stretch, and they're 3-0 so far. Ideally, you wouldn't go 7-2. Ideally, you would do better than that. 1 loss or 0 loss, 0 losses. The chances are they're not going to win out. Chances are they're not going to win 11 in a row to end the regular season. I'm not going to rule anything out with this team. After what we just saw them do on Saturday and last Tuesday, it's hard to completely rule out any possibility. Chances are they'll have a game where they slip. Chances are they'll have a game where the shots aren't falling or their defense is a little bit off or the other team makes some crazy shots. All those things that sort of conspire to cause you to lose a game. But if it's tonight, if it's a quad 1 game on the road, Wake Forest is top 40 in the net rankings, something like that. It's not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing because there's still 5 more games. There's still a trip to Clemson. There's still a rematch with NC State, some quality games of varying degrees. And the reality is if they go 7-1 in the final 8 or 8-1 in the final 9, I think they're going to be top 4 in the ACC. So they're into the tournament, with a double bye, right? And they should be in pretty good shape to get into the NCAA tournament. They would have 22 wins at that point, at the end of the regular season. And I would feel pretty good about their chances. So a loss tonight doesn't doom them, but a win tonight would be huge. Particularly if it comes the way we've talked about, that some of these other guys step up. If Hinson is getting contained at all, and again, I'm not betting on Blake Hinson getting contained, but if some of these other guys step up, Carrington, Lowe, Leggett, and if Federico can play strong tonight, and Pitt comes out of this with a win, I mean, that momentum just keeps building and building and building, and the hype keeps building and building, and it's going to get tougher and tougher to keep Pitt in that next 4 out line. Pretty soon, they win a game like tonight, they're going to move to that first 4 out, and then it won't be too long before they're in the last 4 in. Andy Katz yesterday put him at number 28 in his top 36 power rankings. Pitt made its debut there, broke in after being unranked. Number 28. They're getting some attention, they're making noise, and tonight's another opportunity to go on the road, win an ACC game, and keep building that resume. Oh, by the way, Wake Forest, 13-0 at home this season. There was another team that was 13-0 at home this season. I think we know what happened in that one. All right, it's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to watch this team play again. I'm excited to see what they do in a challenging environment against a good team, a talented team that gave them all they could handle at the Peterson Event Center just 3 weeks ago. So this should be a good one. Remember, after the game is over, we will be live right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to talk about it. Make sure you tune in. The post-game shows are always a lot of fun. We enjoy having a little conversation. It'll probably be around 11, quarter after, somewhere around there. We will be live after Pitt Wake Forest to talk about the game. Like and subscribe before you go. We appreciate that. And then head over and check out Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, and recruiting, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We'll catch up with you tonight for the live post-game show, and then we'll be back with another Morning Pitt tomorrow morning right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.